Hi guys, welcome Creators Barn podcast, and today we are in a different location. We are in Loud Noises production studio, and I'm with the very talented Owen Davies. Hi Owen.
Hiya.
How you doing, mate? You all right?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Thank you so much for allowing me to come into your studio.
Thanks for inviting me on.
No, man, it's wicked. I know because we met up about a year ago when you were working with a band, Europa Rain,
Yep.
with Ash and the guys, and I just was blown away by the setup you've got here.
Thank you.
No, man, it's amazing. So hopefully we'll be able to show the guys a little bit of what you've got going on here.
Yeah, of
But
course.
what we kind of want to do today really is just nice chat. I mean, we know we were chatting beforehand about experiences and stuff. So would you like to go sort of, how did you first get into like music? What inspired? Because you're a musician as well as a producer, aren't you?
Yeah, so I started off as a musician. So when I was younger, always been really interested in music. Come from a musical household, not in the sense people are musicians, but everybody loved music. Like my parents are always playing a wide variety of music. What you'll probably find throughout this podcast is when I talk about stuff like I'm always into modern music, whether that's pop music or metal. Like I really like things that are current at the moment and like things that sound really big. So like I say, when I was younger, parents always listening to music, lots of rock, lots of pop. Probably late 90s, I got into indie because my dad loved indie.
Yeah.
So I wanted to play the guitar, got a Fender Strat, and then started learning a bit of Oasis. Actually, no, not Oasis, I was more Blur side. But yeah, learned a load of kind of indie stuff, started noodling in my bedroom, and then I'd say I kind of got a little more interested in the heavier side of stuff and discovered new metal, and then that kind of hooked me. But when I was kind of listening to that style of music, I really kind of grabbed onto like the production elements and what things sounded like, and that like really started to interest me.
That was one of the questions I was going to ask you about what sound, you know, would you hear something and go, well, how does they create that? And is that what got you into the production side more, you know, as opposed to just being a musician?
Yeah. So I'd say that was kind of the point where I really started listening to recording. A little bit before that, I've always been like interested in fiddling with electronics to do with audio. Never really knew what I was doing. Before I even played guitar, I'd always be going off down to the jumble sale in the local village, like buying as many speakers as I could and wiring them up around my room, just for my hi-fi. So I've always had this interest in the technical side of stuff.
And how old were you then when you first started doing that, wiring up speakers?
Probably 10, 11.
Oh, wow.
Like,
so
we're only
then.
talking twisting some wires together at this point.
Yeah.
But then as I learnt to play guitar, that then moved into like modifying guitars. Obviously with the new metal era, it was all about different effects chains.
Who was the first new metal band you got into?
System of a Down.
Right, okay.
My cousin gave me a tape that had System of a Down on, and that was kind of like my... Was it? Or it might have been well, they weren't new metal, but it might have been Pantera, actually, my first metal band. But first new metal band was definitely System of a Down.
Yeah.
I can remember wearing that tape out. And in fact, I think I had Korn on the other side.
Yeah, that'd be about right, yeah. That was wicked band.
Yeah. And I mean, especially those Korn recordings at that point in time, like that blew my mind.
Well, the first new metal band you got into, whichever one it was, but what was the sound, do you remember?
It was organic, but it still sounded like new and current. So at that point, you had like a really pingy snare, like the kick drums were cutting through. You had this new bass sound that people hadn't heard before, like it's a big bass. Obviously, in Korn's case, you had a lot of top end as well. And I don't know, I think it was like this new sound that really interested me. And then also the elements of, for me, I kind of see that's where like the elements of pop started to move into some of the heavier side of stuff. So if we think about all of our classic bands like Metallica, Pantera, it was just like pure guitar, drums, vocals. When we get to new metal, we've got like these kind of crazy delay effects going on. You've got a bit of scratching going on. And it's where we first start to see like all of these pop elements coming into the music as well.
I was going to say that like an influx of DJs in metal bands, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Limp Bizkit and... I'm not sure whether... Do you remember Fear Factory?
Yeah.
Did they have a...
I can't remember if they had... But again, lots of electronic elements coming into there. Like we had that like industrial undertone with like samples and things running underneath.
Yeah, Nine Inch Nails and...
Yeah. Like all that stuff. And obviously, samples, another thing that we started to hear a lot of, where before we wouldn't have had that in metal music. It was like, we're just a band playing music. Now we're starting to experiment a little bit more, and like, that just blew my mind.
Yeah. So, but you're playing guitar. You've started to get interested in the sounds you're hearing from all these records and bands you're getting into, and you've the speakers, modding the guitars. Do you remember what your first experience of, were you being recorded, or your first experience of recording somebody else?
If I think about this chronologically, after kind of making these crazy hi-fi setups in my room, then had a little spell where I wanted to be a DJ. But going down to Tandy, buying mixers, and that's where I started to like experiment with kind of sampling and manipulating sound myself. I had like a little effects box, and my friends used to come round, we'd go through these crazy hi-fi setups, but we'd kind of sample stuff, mix stuff. And then after that, it'd be recording my own bands at home. I think at this point we were past kind of tape recorders. We're just getting to Boss BR8s, I think, was the thing at the time, where you recorded on a zip disc, and we're like recording.
Those.
Yeah. So this would probably been, I don't know, about 15, 16-ish. We'd start to record our own demos onto kind of the Boss BR8s, experiment with some of the sounds on there, and demo things ourselves. So I didn't really have much access to studios when I was younger. When we're talking before the podcast said, I was brought up on the Isle of Man, so there were studios there, but it's not like it is over here where there's lots of studios everywhere, so it's kind of recording yourself and demoing.
I think the other thing, when you're that age, that young, teenagers, and nobody's got the money to go into a studio.
No, definitely not.
I mean, back then as well,
it's far less accessible than it is now, and even down to the technology that was available to you. Obviously now you can have a laptop and you can create an amazing production with countless tracks. Like we were limited to these 8 tracks, some fairly what's the word? Like not great effects. And we just had to work with what we've got. And I mean, listening back to those recordings now, I think not my finest recordings. I was still learning. But they taught me so much about how to kind of use effects, even thinking about songs and being able to listen back to things and think about arrangement as well.
You know the thing with the Boss, the BR8? Wasn't that one of the first, correct me if I'm wrong, where you could have virtual tracks? It's one of the first home accessible studio decks that you could actually have virtual tracks on it.
Possibly.
Yeah, I'm trying to...
That kind of rings...
It's kicked off a little memory.
That rings bell. So I had access to those in school, so... I was fortunate. I was one of the first year groups where like music technology was a thing in school. So my school invested in some BR8s and some monitors, and I was like the test student for doing music production at AS level, I think it was.
Yes, probably.
So I had access to those all the time. So I can remember virtual tracks, but I can't remember exactly.
I might be
how
wrong.
Everything worked. No, it does ring a bell.
Yeah.
And I can remember like some really primitive kind of amp modelling and plugging guitars in at the time, thinking it sounds amazing. I actually found a CD a couple of months ago back in the house where I've got like some of those recordings, but I've not got a CD player to play them anymore. So I want to hear what they sound like.
It's worth doing.
Yeah, definitely. I want to hear what I was doing at the time. I can remember there's definitely going to be a Metallica cover on there. I can't remember what song, and there'll be a cover of Radiohead's Creep, and then there's one original song, but I can't remember.
It'd be quite interesting if you ever do dig it out, have you remastered it? To do that as a little side project, remaster.
I don't know if, I'm only going to I suppose I could master it. I'm only going to have the stereo track. It'd be nice if I still had those zip discs and could kind of take all of those tracks. But that kind of BR8 thing, that's where it kind of moved into recording. And then at that point, I did a lot of kind of songwriting with a friend, and his dad actually owned a studio. So as well as having a studio, I think before he had kind of all the recording gear, he had like this 16-track digital recorder. It was kind of like a BR8. I can't remember what brand it was. So I'd go around to his house, and then it blew my mind. We've got another 8 tracks to play with. So now we could create like these 16-track recordings, and that's kind of where it all started. And like I say, at school, I was fortunate to be able to do music technology, and because I was the only person doing it, there was like a real focus on me. So I had like one-on-one tuition from 16 to 18, which was incredible.
I guess unheard of.
Yeah.
So you've gone into that that realm, if you like, of the music world.
Yeah.
At what point did that sort of take? Because mentioned you were in bands beforehand. I mean, I don't know if you want to mention those bands, or I can give them a shout in the description, whatever. It's up to you.
Yeah. So this will be when I was still back in the Isle of Man. So bands in school. Well, I can't even remember their names now, but we'd play like local venues. There's a local youth group that put on gigs, and they also had a recording studio. That's another way that I kind of found my way into the production world, because I had this like massive obsession with audio. They then let me start coming out and mixing sound for them at gigs, and like at the point, like it was pretty insane. You'd be getting like 300-400 kids coming to shows in the Isle of Man because there was nothing else to do. So at that point, being like 16 and doing sound for like gigs of that size was
that's pretty good going.
Pretty crazy. I don't know what my mixer sounded like then, but like it gave me lots of experience. But they also accessed a grant and got to build a studio. So it was run by like some amazing youth workers, but they didn't really have any experience in music. And looking back at it now, it's a bit crazy that they came to me, but they were asking me for advice. I was kind of going back to my music technology teacher and then passing on the information. So that's when I first got access to a studio, because I helped them build that first like youth studio with all the information I've been passed on by my my kind of tutor. And then so school, played in bands, just covers bands, did a few original songs. Imagine they were 4-chord type things. And then I moved to Stafford to go to university when I was 18. So whilst I was at uni, I got into a new metal band, and we did 3 years just playing locally. I can remember doing a lot of gigs at Red Rose in Rugeley, and kind of got a bit of a taste of like playing with some of the bands I actually like listening to. Then I was like, oh, I'm quite into this band thing. Whilst we were at uni, we were all like, once uni's finished, we're going to stay in Stafford, we're going to do this band thing for real. But it came to graduation day, and everyone said they were moving home, apart from me and the singer. We're like, nope, we're staying here and we're doing this band thing. And that was about the time this little website called MySpace was starting to take off, which some people might remember. And we had a bit of a change in direction. And we got better at guitar, and we kind of put together a bit of a metal band. Well, at the time, people had said deathcore band, and we really kind of exploited the MySpace thing. So from 2005 to 2009, I was in a band called Bound by Blood, and we basically spent 4 years sleeping in vans, driving around, playing up and down the country. But what was amazing about that was because MySpace had kind of made the gap between like big artists and up and coming artists so small, we were starting to play shows with some of our favourite bands. And then like when bands were coming over for their first tours, like bands now who are huge, like Bring Me the Horizon or Parkway Drive, we were starting to get support slots on those shows or on those tours. So at that point I was like, music could be a living here. We weren't making anything, don't get me wrong, at this point we didn't make a penny. It was probably costing us money, but we're kind of getting a taste of what it's like to actually do music as like a real professional thing. And that was kind of where the band thing ended for me, because whilst I was at university, I don't want to say I wasn't the best student, but I was also using those studios to record outside of my studies, which for me, if you are studying music production somewhere, then you should make use of those facilities as much as possible while they're there and available to you for free. But I was really concentrated sometimes on getting the best productions I can. And looking back now, sometimes I wish I'd been as concentrated on some of my studies. But for me, I was just single track minded. Like I wanted to be the best at recording I could be, and like develop skills whilst I wasn't paying for the studio. And so doing a bit of recording, and then that band, like I say, after uni carried on, and then I managed to land a job as soon as I finished university in a studio recording live sessions. So this was running alongside the band, but as that started to take up more of my time, I was thinking, as much as I love being in a band, like my true passion is like working with other people and like being in the studio and doing the technical side. It kind of combines that musical thing that I enjoy, but I also get to scratch this itch of playing with equipment and also working with different people all the time, not the same 5 people. 4 of the people, 5 of us all together.
Yeah,
I mean, I still love those guys. We're still all best friends, but I enjoy like the variety of working with different people.
Just to quickly backtrack a bit. Your degree you did, was that a joint performance tech, or was it was it a mixed degree?
No, it was just pure music technology. So that was a science one. So it's like all the technical side. These days, like, there's obviously so many more courses available when you get to that level with the creative stuff. Which just weren't around at that point. You did music technology and you did a science. That was pretty much it.
So you work in a studio, right? I don't know how much you want to go through from that phase to the point where you were in your own space and you ended up being like the main guy. So it'll be a bit of backtracking on kind of studio experience. So if we go back to the Isle of Man, that'd be great, because for the guys watching, there are going to be some students, and they're going to performers and tech people watching this. Any of that stuff's going to be of interest, mate. So whatever you feel free to talk about, happy to talk about, please do.
Of course. Great. So if we start from, obviously, we've done the demos, and now it's time to start thinking about how I can get experience. At this point in my life, I probably thought I knew a lot more than I actually did. And the key thing for anyone moving into production or music is kind of learning from people, seeing what they're doing, not copying, but then taking that as inspiration and building on that. Like, mentors can really help you on your journey into music. And I've had a lot of mentors throughout my life at different stages in the studio and working in bands. They've kind of led me to having my own studio. So like I say, this youth group, I got into the studio there, started doing like some assistant engineering of sessions, starting to learn how to use a mixing desk, how to set up a microphone. Then my friend who I talked about before, that we're recording on his 16-track recorder, his dad had a studio, so I got to sit in with some sessions, do a little bit of work with him, see how things work in a real studio. So that was all in the Isle of Man. Then I moved to university. I found that it was really difficult to kind of get into a studio when I was at uni. I was kind of sending emails, knocking at doors. No one was replying to me. So I was like, right, in that case, I'll develop my own skills and engineer my own sessions at university. Then when it came to graduating in 2005, there's a studio here in Cannock, and I was practicing there with a band. One day we got there to rehearse, and the studio computer had smoke coming out of the back of it, and the guy who owned the studio was like pulling his hair out. It's like, I don't know what to do, I've got a session, I don't know what's going on. We're having a chat, and I mentioned that I'd just done a music tech degree. And he's like, could you have a look at this for me? And I was thinking, there is no way I could fix this. Like, I do audio, not computers. Went and had a look. I could see that it was like the PCI card had blown out. That at that point, I think it was motor interfaces connected to. It's like, look, this is your problem. We need to order this, this, and this. He wasn't technical at all. He was like, do you know how to fix this? It's like, yeah, of course. So I order that. He ordered a replacement card. I came and fitted it a couple of days later. That led to a conversation saying, do you want to potentially come and engineer some sessions? At this point, this studio, they weren't making any money really off their recording, and they were only making money off the rehearsal rooms. So I came up with an idea of doing live sessions. So this, like, when YouTube wasn't anything like it is now, I was like, what we'll do is we get kind of bands from around the country, and because of this MySpace thing, like, I kind of made some friendships with like some bands who were much bigger than my own bands and the bands I was working with at the time. We were inviting them down to come and do a live session, and we actually offered it as a free live session for a YouTube series. But then if the bands wanted to take that recording with them, they would then take that and they could then release it and do what they want, but the studio would keep it to release as their live session thing. So that I'd say kind of saved that studio, because we were doing maybe 5 of those a day, and that went on for a good probably 2 years, I think.
5 a day?
Yeah, like some days were intense.
Right.
So it wasn't every day 5 a day, but like by the time we get into weekends, holidays, we'll be like cramming in 5 a day.
That's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. And then I would engineer all those, and then I'd have to mix all of those as well. So that kind of was my first actual getting paid in a studio. So when I can't remember how it worked to start off with. I think I was probably paid a day rate to start off with, and then as it got further into it, and I realising that sometimes it'd be like 4 or 5 bands in a day who were paying for their recordings, like, I need a little bit more money here for what I'm doing, because then after it, it's the work after that when you're editing and mixing. And yeah, that channel went pretty well. At the time, there was a band called Penknife Love Life, who were kind of a big MySpace band, and I think 2 of those tracks ended up on their EP at the time. That, I mean, I imagine it's still out there now. But again, that was another bit of getting a taste of working with, like, this is a band that I see on the internet.
Yeah.
I've got to record them. And yeah, that's kind of where it turned from something that I did assisting or helping out and being like more professional. Again, that light bulb moment of this could actually be a living and I can make some money from this, and like something that I enjoy doing.
Quite a lot there. I mean, I don't know whether to come back to this later or do it now, because you're talking about everything you're doing so far as a learning experience, and just getting into that studio where you fix the guy's computer, then you're getting a job out of it. Is there something that you would say, you know, going back and looking at you then, the young guys coming up now who are trying to get into the same thing, is there something that you'd say, try and do? I mean, the mentors thing was really, that hit quite a bit. And also for me, the point of using the free gear while you've got it. So if you're at college or uni, you know, use the equipment that's there, because once you finish, you have to pay for it.
Yeah, it costs
but
a lot of money.
Is there anything you would recommend somebody going in, like somebody like, you know, a young guy, a girl, whatever, wants to get into the production and sound engineering side? Is there anything you'd say, make sure you do this?
I think this is something that I didn't really latch on until my late 20s, which I'd really wish I'd learned earlier on. You kind of make your own opportunities in music, and everyone talks about there being some kind of lucky break, which is true, but when there's that lucky break, you have to be prepared for that break, and generally you've made that opportunity. Someone's not going to come and give you that opportunity when you just sat at home making music on your laptop that no one's ever heard. So maybe you've made a track and you're like, oh, this isn't good enough to show anybody. Well, if you're not showing anybody, nobody can hear what you're doing. And that opportunity might actually be, someone hears your song, they're like, it's a great song, but the production could do some work. Someone might reach out to you and say, I really like your song, but production-wise, maybe try doing this, and this, and it might be someone who's a little bit further on your career. You've just made yourself a networking opportunity then, where you can go backwards and forwards and use them as a mentor. The same as reaching out to studios. Like I said before, so many people said no to me, but you've got to make sure you don't give up. Just carry on knocking on doors, but you need to do it in a mindful way, not to the point where you're irritating people. Like if you're sending an email every day saying, I want to come and make teas for you, I want to come and make teas for you, that's not going to like get you in the door. If you sent an email, someone doesn't respond, leave it a month, 2 months, and then send them another email. But don't be pushy about it. Just be like, hey, this is, I want to get into this line of work, or I'm interested in seeing what you're doing. Could you maybe help me out? And if that doesn't work, think about what you can offer. Is there something that you can bring to the table that they haven't yet got? Like, are you going to add some kind of value to that person or to that business? And they're going to be much more open to having someone in the room with them then, if you can actually help them out in some kind of a way. And it's a two-way street then. They're going to share information and years worth of experience, but you're maybe making their life easier.
Yeah, that's great. What you've just said there is great advice. I think the only thing I potentially would add is accept rejection.
Yeah, of course.
You know, it's not personal. It's a business. Somebody said no the first time, few months later might say, oh, remember that guy? He was polite, you know, whatever it was. And be able to say, no, by the way, you're still looking for work, you know. So everything you just said, that's really nice to hear, Owen, you know, from someone that's been, you know, the experience you've got and where you are right now. I mean, I know the guys can see a bit of this, but this is an amazing setup you've got here.
Yeah, look, it's just years and years of work and collecting. Like, I'm no different to anybody else. If you love what you do, then everyone can build something like this around them. It's just loving what you're doing and making sure you're kind of producing the best work you can. And also something that is really important, once that door opens, you've got to be a cool hang. Like, that's so important. You've got to be able to be around people and people want to be with you.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to put this. If we're talking from studio side, if you've been invited in to maybe intern, come and sit in on a session, you might be a little bit more outspoken and confident because you've had the confidence to go and ask for that, which has put you ahead of some of your peers. But sometimes that can be detrimental if you're sat in a room and you're telling the band what to do and then saying to the engineer, do this, do that. Like, you're there to learn from them as a mentor, but I'm not saying don't ever open your mouth or don't mention anything, because there are loads of times when people are interning and they've saved a recording, like just mentioning to the engineer's ear, like, if you notice that's clipping, like, oh, thanks for that. But then thinking about adding value person, you'd be like, right, this person's got my back, like they're checking the levels. But if it's a case of going to the band, you played that chord terrible, like that is not how you should be playing that chord, like that isn't going to go down well and you're not going to be invited back into that room again. So you need to think about how you hold yourself when you're in the room.
I'm so glad you said that. I say that kind of thing quite a lot to especially students, and it's hearing yourself say that, it's massive. I think it's a massive point, the people skills side.
Yeah, definitely.
I've been very lucky to have some great people on, yourself included. The one thing that they all come up with is or come back to is the people skills. Be a good person, like you just said, to be around, you know, know your boundaries, be respectful at all times, even if someone's been disrespectful to yourself, that kind of thing. So going forward from that, when was your actual own studio?
I was doing these live sessions, and then as well as that, I can't remember kind of how it worked, maybe at the weekends or when we had 3 days, I was then starting to do like recordings with bands, like working on EPs, and it just kind of I just kind of outgrew that space, I suppose, and I was like, I really need to find my own place now. I was there all the time, and I just wanted my own studio that I could kind of be at home in. So it was 2009, so Loud Noises production. I came up with the name. It was from a film, I think it was Anchorman. At the time, there was a band we all liked and they had a sample from Anchorman. Someone was like, you should call the studio that. And at that point, I just did really heavy bands, like, that works. So I kind of tried to start creating a brand at that point in this studio, but I was like, I need my own space. So the first actual Loud Noises production studio was May 2009. Okay. And it had previously been like a practice room on a farm. It was like an old barn. I spoke to a friend, bought a mixer off him, very kindly got my first loan from my parents. I think I got $5,000 and I'd saved up a little bit of money, and I was like, this is my cash to set up a studio. So got a mixer, already got some monitors and some bits and pieces, bought a load of mics, and basically had a setup. But the ethos was kind of like this place in every studio I've been in, like it was meant to be a comfortable space. So I had nice sofas there. I've always had great coffee because bands, and myself included, love good coffee. Yeah. And although it's about creating a nice studio and place to record, it's also about creating a space where people are comfortable to record and you can get the best out of them. So yeah, it's like a barn unit. 2 rooms. You had to walk off around the corner to go to the toilet. On one of the fields, there was an electric fence that made guitar amps click that you had to go and turn off whenever you wanted to record amps. It flooded all the time, but I still love that studio.
It was yours.
Yeah, it was the first thing, and at that point, I recorded a band who were friends with lots of other hardcore bands, and I kind of transitioned from this MySpace death metal thing, which was kind of the curve that was happening with heavy music in that kind of scene at the time. Everyone was getting into hardcore, and I kind of got into this little pocket of like Manchester hardcore bands,
Right.
and like that made me really, really busy. Like I did a few records for some bands who were quite well known and like touring across England and Europe. People found out that I did the recordings, and that kind of what really set the fire underneath me to be like, now I'm paying my rent from this as well.
Right.
And
Massive
like,
step.
this is, again, I was not rich. Like I was still going to the cheap hours in the supermarket, but now I was actually making a living from recording music.
Yeah.
Which is like, right, this is actually a valid career choice.
This place is amazing. Mm-hmm. Before we were talking, you said like you come in here, it's, it's your job. You come in every day. But I've only been here a couple of times, and it blows me away the setup you've got. I mean, at some point, perhaps after we've had the chat, I'd love to do a walk around with you just to show the guys what the facilities you've got here, because it really is an amazing setup. Mm-hmm. One of the things I'll quickly go back to, I won't ramble on too much, is that you have made that comfortable environment. You come in, it's kind of like a welcoming atmosphere. You've got the sofas, like you said, good coffee. It's always important. So when did this place take off?
So in between this studio on the barn and this one, we're still talking probably a 10, 15-year gap, I think, in between those. Right. So I'll do a real quick roundup of like the different studios. So I think this is studio 5 or 6 now.
Okay.
So I've had quite a lot of studios over the years and worked in different spaces. So after the barn, absolutely incredible, like first place that's my own. I can do what I want, but it's a bit raggedy around the edges. It was an old barn, and $5,000 at that point in my life was a mind-blowing amount of money. But realistically, for setting up a studio, it doesn't even scratch the surface. So we DIY'd a lot of it and did some like still. Look back at some of that stuff now, although I think of the production like, still learning, but I'm still like really proud of some of the stuff that came out of that studio. After that, I was like, I've outgrown this space. I need somewhere bigger if I'm going to grow within this as a career, and I need like a bigger studio with more rooms, a toilet that's inside, a kitchen, all of those kind of things. This studio in the control room, we had like a kettle in there with the good coffee and a TV in there. Like everyone was all in this little room. It got very warm. So I handed in my notice on that unit. A friend took it over to use it as rehearsal space again, and I started looking for another unit around, and I found a unit in Lichfield, signed all the lease, was ready to go. That summer I was actually on tour. This point I finished like playing in bands, like going on tour, like working the stage crew. When I viewed this unit, looks absolutely incredible. Saved up a fair bit of money to do a build out, ordered all of the materials, dropped it in the studio, came back off tour, walked down into what was going to be the live room, and could just hear this tap, tap, tap. I was like, what's going on? Went outside and realised the building next door was a tap dancing school, which they'd failed to tell me.
Sorry, that's great. That's great.
I thought, what am I going to do? So made a few calls to people who knew far more about studio design than me, and so like, what can I do about this? So I thought, there's nothing you can do. Like with soundproofing, we can kind of reduce airborne noise, but this is mechanical. It's like coming through the ground. The studio was actually underground, so it's all kind of transferring into the studio. Yeah. No way of getting rid of that, or no way of getting rid of it within a reasonable amount of money, and there just wasn't the space there to put in what we needed. So from that, I was like, I can't build in this studio. I'd signed a lease, so I was locked in for 5 years.
No.
Fortunately, I managed to do like big legal thing, but get out of the lease and get all of my money back. But obviously I'd spent all my money on materials at that point. Yeah. So a friend got a studio, And they helped me. Well, he helped me out with his studios. Like, look, when I'm not using it, it was like a studio for his band. Great setup, like Pro Tools HD. Had the same mixing desk I was using. Loads of nice outboard. Did some great stuff there. Like, really enjoyed being there. But again, kind of outgrew that space. I wanted my own place again. And then, kind of, whilst I was in that space, that. I don't know, I was just kind of burning the candle at both ends. I was there early in the morning, leaving early in the morning, and I started to lose my love for recording and music. And it came to the point where I was just trying to chase paying the bills there, like pay my rent at home, meet the lease there. And I was like, I'm not enjoying this anymore. And I thought, I'm done. Like, I thought that was it, and music wasn't for me anymore. So I actually took a step back. At that point, I had somebody assisting me. They took on the lease. They're doing great there now, and still there. And I kind of moved back home. Well, not that I lived in the studio, although I should have. Kind of came back home, was like going to reevaluate what I'm going to do. Still had little bits of tour work going on, but I was like, I'm done with the studio. And I think it took all of about probably a month or two, and someone reached out and was like, look, I need to do an EP. It was a singer-songwriter. What's going on? I was like, I'm out. I was like, I'm done. I still had all of my equipment stashed away. Well, I sold a lot of it, but had a fair bit of it stashed away in my dining room. And I thought, I'm going to help this person out because we really get on, and I always enjoyed working with them. And set up a makeshift studio in my spare room. Did an EP, and I was like, what have I done? I was like, I can't do anything else. Like, I love this too much. Yeah. And that's where I started thinking about this, but this is still probably 7 years out of this studio. So I was like, I need to come up with an actual plan now of what I'm going to do. If I'm doing this, it's now going to be on my own terms. Like, I don't want to be paying someone else's building off. I want it to be my space that I've got total control over. So I had a garage at that house, converted that garage into a studio, had a control room, little booth where I could do vocals and drums. And I was then like, I need to find a studio that I can do bigger sessions in, and this is going to tide me over whilst I find a space to build out a studio. During that time, I ended up going and doing a show with Magnum, guitar teching for them. Right, okay. And met Mark from Mad Hat, who at the time was their tour manager and front of house engineer, was for a long, long time. We got chatting, and he was like, look, I know your situation. He was like, on the days where I'm not using my studio, do you want to use it on a dry hire basis? So then I started working out of Mad Hat and this new studio that I built in the garage, and that kind of went on. It was only meant to be like a 6-month, 12-month thing, and it went on for a good few, probably 4-5 years. Right. But that kind of not that there's loads of pressure, but there wasn't as much weight on me anymore because I've not got this building that I've got to look after. Like, I'm walking down to my studio, I'm going to Mad Hat to do sessions, and I could be more selective about the work that I was doing. I wasn't having to record everything that came through the door, and I was like, do you know what, this is what I signed up for. This is what I want to be doing, working with bands I actually enjoy working on all the time, and projects that I'm invested in. Maybe saying it's not that I didn't enjoy all of the sessions that I was doing at that other studio, but I wasn't as invested in them. Like, this now gave me the opportunity to really like invest in projects that I really wanted to work on. And then we got this place, which we're renovating a house here, got some land, and I was like, this is the perfect opportunity to build a studio. So we started the process of looking at building a studio from the ground up. So everything here is by design. This was just a orchard before, and we plonked a studio down. I got a studio designer to design the place. I was like, this is going to be my forever studio, so I want to do it all properly. And this was pre-COVID, so we priced it all up. Everything came within budget, we could do it. And then COVID hit, price of materials went up. I was like, oh, we're a little bit stuck here. I've paid for a designer, we've gone through all the planning bits, done all of that side, ready to start building, but now the studio is going to cost 3 times more than it was before. And originally it's meant to be built out by a builder. I was like, I can't afford to do that anymore. So the only way that I could do it was to take on some of the work myself. So a carpenter did all of the big external frames, got the outside walls up, the roof on, and then everything internally I did myself.
Wow.
Had to learn kind of on the job.
That's a big job.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that I'd be able to manage recording at my other space whilst I was building this, but really I ended up taking a year out and just doing the occasional project to just get this done so I could get in and start working. And then to come back to the question, I've been in here since 2023, I think, is when we first moved in here. So
it's relatively new.
Yeah, it's still relatively new.
I mean, it looks new, but
yeah.
I say again the same thing when I first came in with you were recording the band, Europa Rain. It looked new, but the feeling of it, if it's a lived-in space, it felt like that. Like I said, it was like a good atmosphere.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's kind of thinking about how people feel when they're in spaces like that, being able to communicate with people. Like I say, it's also the environment. So I've also been fortunate over the years to work in lots of different studios, go and work on different projects, track drums somewhere or go and do an EP somewhere. And I think there's always comments from wherever I go. People always say the studio's cleaner when I leave than when I got there. But it's about having... when there's a session, there's cables everywhere.
Yeah.
But when you turn up, the studio will always be reset like this.
Yeah.
It'll always smell like spiced apple or spiced pumpkin. I'll always make sure there's a plug-in in it's an inviting space to be, and I think that's really important. In 10 years' time, this studio will still look exactly the same because, again, being fortunate to work in lots of studios, I've been in lots of ragged studios over the years, and it just doesn't feel as nice, and I don't feel like you get the best out of a band in those kind of spaces, unless it's somewhere with a bit of a story, and then there might be some kind of magic in that studio. But generally, you need a comfortable place to work in.
Yeah, so like I said, you have definitely got that vibe here.
Yeah.
I mean, so if we can talk about the kinds of people you get coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So, is it mostly bands, or is it a mixture of solo artists and bands, duos, etc.?
So I would say the majority of my work is bands, leaning towards kind of the heavier side of things, but we're kind of thinking commercial rock, kind of metalcore, heavier, polished kind of sounding things. But I still do a little bit of singer-songwriter stuff. So there's a few different artists that I've worked with for years, and they still come back to work with me because they enjoy being in this space and kind of the way we work.
So, young band coming in, what advice would you give them for coming in? They're going to book a session with you. Mm-hmm. Okay, they're going to pay for that session. So, in order for them to get the most out of that, which is something you would recommend?
Okay, so if you're a younger band, think about getting into the studio for the first time, I think before you even commit to a studio, is to start having a look at which studio or producer or engineer is the right fit for you. Yeah. So I always use a bit of an analogy. So we've got Steve Albini, who was obviously famous for recording Nirvana, but recorded lots and lots of people's favourite bands. He is or was known for being hands off. He was I come in, I record the band, they leave. I don't touch their work whatsoever. And then, I don't know, someone like Feldman, who does Avril Lavigne and kind of that kind of thing, pop punk, and works with Travis Barker. He's notorious for going in, rewriting your song, doing everything, totally producing you. Yeah. I think first of all you need to have a think about what is it we want as a band, or what do we need as a band. I always say to artists, there's 2 ways to think about being in a band. Like, are you doing this purely for enjoyment and you're just going to the studio for the experience, being in the studio, and you want to leave with something that you can listen back to? Or are you going into the studio to create the best music you can, and you're thinking about this being music that other people want to listen to? There is nothing wrong with just making music for yourself, for your own enjoyment, and going and recording that and walking away. But if we're thinking about this being a career choice, you don't pay your own bills. We need to think about something that appeals to other people. So first of all, you need to make sure you go into the right studio. So I kind of see myself as someone who's in between both of those people. So I'm not a dictator in the studio. I'm never going to say this has got to be how you do something. Like, I'll lead the sessions, but at the end of the day, it's the band's choice. But then I'll fall on the Feldman side in that I'll be like, look, I think we should maybe swap the arrangement around a little bit like this. Should we think about using this guitar sound instead? Should we enhance this section with a little bit of additional production, maybe some program drums in the background, something? So you need to kind of see, first of all, which studio is best. If you come to me and I don't know, let's say you're an old school punk band and you want to do everything without a click track, record it live in a day, you'd look at my website and like, this probably isn't the place for us, because like this guy likes to really get deep into our recording and kind of pull it apart. Like I say, I'm not going to ever tell you how your music should sound. Like, I want all bands to have their own individuality. Like, some studios described as a sausage factory before, where a band goes in, they all come out sounding the same. Like, you'll hear every band I work with has a different kind of sound to their mix, because I don't use the same guitar sounds, don't use the same drum sounds. We kind of tailor everything. But yeah, this wouldn't be the right studio for you. So if you're going into a studio, first thing, look at where you go in, who's going to be running the session, and if that kind of fits with you. If you're not too sure, reach out to a studio, like ask them, like, or tell them what it is you want to achieve. And if they think they're able to do that, give them some references, say this is what we aspire to be, this is the kind of sound we're trying to create. Is that something that's in your ballpark? Would you enjoy working on this? And then once you've done that, say we've selected a studio, you might even go down and have a chat with the owner or the engineer, whoever's working on it, get a feel for the vibe. And then it's to start thinking about what you can provide to the studio to give them as much of a starting point as possible. So before I even commit to any sessions, I'll always ask for some form of a demo. So that doesn't mean you need to have like spent loads of money on equipment to record yourself. It could just be your phone in a rehearsal room. Just so I can get an idea, hear what you sound like. And like, it might be the worst recording you've ever made, but it's absolutely fine. The only people that are going to hear it is us, just so I can get a feel. Once you've done that, then it's kind of being prepared. Practice, make sure you know your parts inside out. Something that has happened in the past is if we're going for kind of like these more modern recordings, there are going to be points where we're overdubbing and dropping in, where someone might not be able to start playing from the second chorus. They need to play from the start of the song. So if we're just dropping in a second chorus and you're not capable of dropping in that second chorus, like, I'm fine to hit start from the beginning of the song, but thinking about you getting the most out of that session and it costing you, or being the most affordable as possible, we want to be starting at that point, not having to listen to 2 minutes of a song before we get to the point we need to record. So being well practiced, having an understanding as a band of what you're trying to achieve as a group. So if you're coming into the studio as a band, then for me, everyone in that band has got valid opinions about the music, but you might not all agree on your different opinions. So having an idea of what you want to achieve before you getting into the studio is going to be really helpful, because having those kind of discussions that can sometimes get heated between the band in the studio is a waste of everyone's time. And if you're all singing from the same hymn sheet and you're all aiming for the same thing, then it makes your session much more productive in the long run. And I think that's kind of the biggest bit of advice for anyone going into the studio, new or older bands, is like kind of having the same same kind of vision and all be aiming to get the same thing out of the session. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rather than there being lots of contrasting opinions in the studio.
I'm so glad that you've mentioned the picking the right place, the right person, but also knowing what you're doing when you get in there.
Yeah.
Mainly, look, the time is massively important when you're in the studio. And obviously you don't want to be sitting around waiting for the one person and all that kind of stuff. So my question really was about like younger bands really approaching the studio for the first time. So you've answered that really well. I mean, thank you. No, it's really good, mate. So, I mean, we've covered quite a bit. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to discuss?
I mean, future plans, at the minute, I'm pretty happy with where I am.
Yeah.
Everything ticks over. I've got like a really nice client base. A lot of my work is returning work where we're kind of on an EP or an album cycle, which is great. Every year I'll have like a handful of new artists come in as well, because obviously bands fizzle out over time and people move on to different projects. So where I am, I'm quite comfortable. I always teeter between getting an assistant in. I've had assistants in the past to maybe do some of the prep work just so I can do more. But I'm 50-50 with it. It may be something that happens in the future. It may not. Sometimes I think it's a good idea. But kind of going back to that, the very first part of this conversation, it'd be more about if the right person approached, I guess. If someone sent an email and then we met up and we really get on, like I could say they add value, then that is much more likely to make me think, it's time to get an assistant in again than me posting things on social media, getting an influx of messages from people who'd last maybe a week or so, or wouldn't be the right fit for this particular setup. Like this isn't, I don't see this as a commercial space. This is like my studio where I work with people. So it'd need to be someone who fits into that. It's not a get as many bands in as possible, get them out the door. Like we're kind of working on records and making things sound the best they can and kind of building those up into music that people want to listen to. So at the minute, this is it. But but I always said, after this studio build, never again, because it was, although
I can imagine
it, like, this is incredible. And one day I will release a diary of all of the footage of building this studio. I've got gigs and gigs of videos of me building it from the ground up, from cutting down the trees to putting up the last acoustic panel.
I think people would be interested in that. I think there'd be a lot of people that'd like to see how that was done. Yeah,
I've just not had time to kind of edit it all together, but that will come at some point. So I've said I'll never move, but I don't know.
Never say never.
I've got an itch that needs to be scratched. Like I do have, although this would be the worst business idea in the world, is you see like most people moving out of big studios to build places like this, where it's much more affordable these days, and then just go to the bigger studios to do large parts of the sessions if they need to. I mean, here we can do everything, but sometimes I like to go other places. I can't say that I'm never going to get a house in the country and a big barn and build like a bigger facility. Like that could happen at any point. if I decide that I want to punish myself with another build.
Punish.
I think at that point that'd be bigger than me. There'd be more people involved in the build. I wouldn't be building it all out by myself.
Like you said, never say never. You never know.
Yeah, never know what might happen in the future, but that's kind of the only thing that has pull me away from this space now.
Well, I tell you what, if you do go for that, you'll have to get me back in, and we'll do a tour and a walk around of that place. I'm hoping if we get time after we've had the chat, we'll be able to do a little walk around, show the facilities and stuff. Because I think the massive interest in what you've got here is again, I've repeated myself, but it's a fantastic setup, mate. So you've done a cracking job here.
Like I say, it's just years of obsession and collecting and building it up.
It looks like it's paid off. So
yeah.
If you're happy there, mate, we can call it a day there.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Okay. Well, again, once again, Owen, thank you so much for bringing me in and letting me come and take up your time, because I know how busy you are. And again, fantastic facilities you've got, and hopefully I'll be able to come down when you've got another band in at some point.
Yeah, of course.
All your details and everything else, I'll get them off you, and I'll go in the description for the video.
If anyone's just interested in seeing like behind the scenes of a studio, like Instagram is where I post like session pictures, little reels. I've got a Facebook, but I don't really do much on there.
Yeah.
And then there's a website if you're interested in finding more out about the studio. But if you just want to see a bit more about studios, someone being a bit of an audio and music nerd, then Instagram is a place for those kind of little shorts, pictures and videos.
Well, make sure that, like I said, I'll make sure that goes in the description.
Yeah, brilliant.
So brilliant. That's lovely. Thank you again, Owen. I'm just going to do it. No, man, it's a pleasure. I'm just going to do a quick sign out. So, guys, thank you again for watching and or listening. Please go over and check out Loud Noises Productions with Owen Davies. If there's any comments, questions, whatever, get back to me. Leave it in the comments on the video. But other than that, thank you once again, and hopefully we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks, mate.
Brilliant.